I've learned that no matter what happens or how bad it seems today, life does go on, and it will be better tomorrow. I've learned that you can tell a lot about a person by the way they handle three things: a rainy day, lost luggage, and tangled Christmas lights. I've learned that regardless of your relationship with your parents, you'll miss them when they're gone from your life. I've learned that making a living is not the same thing as having a life. I've learned that life sometimes gives you a second chance. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw something back. I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I've learned that even when I have pain, I don't have to be one. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug, a pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Jorge Luis Figueroa, husband, father, grandfather, brother-in-law, uncle, psychologist, professor at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, indefatigable battler of cancer, creative chef, singer, gardener, boundless embracer of everyone he met, compassionate soul, neighbor, friend, has died. We are gathered this afternoon to pay honor to Jorge's spirit and to the life he lived, to seek comfort for our sorrow, and to celebrate, deeply celebrate, his memory. You'll find a gray hymnal near you. We're going to sing a favorite of his, number 305, De Colores. And rather than make a mess of the Spanish verses, we'll just stick with the English verses today. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing.
Sunlight shines out through When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Hello, friends and family. Wanted to say thank you to Reverend Kathy and the UU Church for letting us have a place to celebrate the life of my father. I did send myself the speech that I was supposed to say today, and it did not arrive to my phone, so I'm gonna wing it, like my dad did. Yes, absolutely. So I will start with a poem that I love. When I go from this place, dress the porch with garlands as you would for a wedding, my dear. Pull the people from their homes and dance in the streets. When death arrives like a bride at the aisle, send me off in my brightest clothing. Serve ice cream with rose petals to our guests. There's no reason to cry, my dear. I have waited my whole life for such a beauty to take my breath away. When I go, let it be a celebration, for I have been here, I have lived, and I've won at this game called life. Boy, did my dad win at life. Yes, and he never failed to tell me so. No, absolutely not. When I woke up this morning, I walked out to his garden, and there were 5 new brand new flowers, just a bloom. One of the many lessons he had taught me was, how much love you give a garden is how much you get out of it. The garden will love you that much back. And so all of you are part of Dad's garden, and that applies to people, to your work, to everything. The garden of life that Dad reaped and sowed was unbelievably bountiful and beautiful. The second thing that he taught me often as I was cooking last night to make treats for all of us today was that you can follow a recipe for a cook, like for a cake or cookies. But when you follow a recipe, sometimes that little bit of extra sugar, that extra egg, is exactly what is needed to make that recipe the best. And then you take that recipe and you share it with others. My father was an unbelievable cook, and I spent many of my years in front of the KitchenAid. My duty was to pull that lever from slow to fast, and I was, extremely proud of that job. And he would say, "Sous chef, come here." And I would come and cook dinner with him. And so through those lessons was every single night as we would prepare dinner for our family or for our friends, he taught me that I might mess up the recipe every now and then. But yes, there's another time for me to make the recipe, and I can always share my food and my love with everyone else. And so in the back, there will be food that Dad has taught me from a very young age how to make. It is made with love. And I want everyone to know that as you look at flowers and how beautiful it is outside, that George and Dad is here, you know? And I had a whole blurb about quoting his commencement speech he made in 2010, and he said it's okay to make mistakes. And that's really what I pulled out of the 15 other verses that were part of the ending of this speech. But it said, it's okay to make mistakes, and dare to be bold was another one. And so he lived vivaciously, and I want you guys and everyone to know that I love you and that Dad loved each and every one of you. So thank you for coming here and celebrating his life.
Y'all make me go after that. I also just want to express gratitude for everyone for being here today and celebrating George and the larger-than-life, unapologetic anything and everything that he was. I met DJ, or Dr. George, as I was in Trask Coliseum / Hanover Hall in his first office. And in that first office, I filled out, if you know anything about George and you met him as a young adult, he'll have you fill out the Imago worksheets with the ego. By the way, Gabby, your homework, you left it behind. So in addition to the Imago worksheets, I was also told about the book, Getting the Love You Want by Dr. Hendricks. And if there was anything that George exemplified and showed, it was love. When I came to him, it was touring UNCW and trying to decide if I was going to go to college. And I was like, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just get a job. And if you speak internet, are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? And George quite literally took me under his wing. And homecoming had a much different meaning for me, especially when I got to come full circle. And while I was graduating college as one of the first in my family, and remembering that he not only helped with my graduation party, but brought the cake that my parents didn't. He was the one that showed up for all of my awards at the university, and he was the one who has introduced me to my career, doing the public health good. And I'm going to leave that one at that. And one of the main things at UNCW that will always be an honor is watching him teach in the classroom. I was his Seahawk link. He came out of retirement for uni because if anyone knows anything about higher education, uni and first year seminars are like, maybe not. But he taught it just so that we could be a professor and a link together. Shit, y'all. So, one of the other major impacts that George had on my life, other than being the parent that was most consistent, every birthday, it was cupcakes or cheesecake or icing. I never got to forget a birthday. And not your father's root beer, which it wasn't my father, but he was, so yay root beer. He helped me take care of my mom when my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Fuck cancer, I'm just gonna say it. And while I was, taking care of her in hospice, he was there for the original hospice meeting. He was there when my mom died. And he was there for the whole process. And he was incremental to that. And he always made sure to remind me, yes, I might be dying of cancer, but you're going through shit too. And I remember whenever I was living with him while he was going through chemo, I got to have my own bedroom after living in a house where I wasn't allowed to put things on the walls or change colors or do anything. And the man gave me an entire room in his house that I could live in and feel at home. And I was like, hey, you're going through chemo. Dogs are really emotionally supportive. I would really love to have a dog. Maybe we could adopt a dog. And next thing I know, he's looking at Great Dane adoption agencies. I was like, I said dog, not horse, but fine. And I know that Nudgy can speak. I noticed several people can speak in the room. He really was a real-life Scooby-Doo, and he wasn't aggressive. He was just an asshole. But he was one of the best dogs that ever could have happened. And that's one of the things that I'm most thankful for and that I got to experience. Last thing that I'm going to say is anyone else who knows him and has been told that lessons in life can be learned with a feather pillow or a Mack truck. This one is a pretty big Mack truck, but it was covered and filled with flowers, I'm convinced, and it was just a shit ton of glitter that exploded as soon as it came out. And so I would like to close by reading a poem by Rumi, one of the many poets and artists that George had introduced me to, and also I love each and every single one of you in the room being my chosen family, and as we have recently discovered, Stardust family. We're all made of the pretty awesome, amazing stardust that makes up the universe. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorries who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
You're both hard to follow. Everything my dad did, he did 200%. He reached high, he leaned in heavy, and he loved hard. And I think we've all heard a little bit, you can read about some of the really cool things he did. He had a pain center where he had a chiropractor, therapy, a pool, all together in the same center, so you could really feel what worked for you to solve your pain in therapy. This is in the 80s. It's so far ahead of its time. He had a zoo he wanted to start. He had a dinosaur exhibit. He had a farm. He had a lot in his life. And growing up with that was awesome, but the other side that he really gave a lot of was how hard he loved. And he taught me that strength and compassion are not different things, that they really work together. And he had more compassion and love and taught me that that gentleness was actually a strength and not a weakness. And that's a lesson I've carried with me my whole life. I remember he took me on a date. We had date nights. He took me to Phantom of the Opera and said, "This is how a man's supposed to treat you." He opens the door for you, you go to dinner, he takes you to Phantom of the Opera. He buys you dinner, he pays. And he did that for me, which was really cool, and he was very both strong and loving. I went to a wedding one time, and he asked a guy there that I just danced with, I was probably 13. He says, "Sir, are you attached to all of your anatomy? I suggest you stay away from my daughter." He also told my first boyfriend, at the time, this was in the 90s, where sagging was really cool, and he said, "If you can't keep your pants up, I will staple them for you."
So he also tells the story, I don't remember, I was too little, but he was out on his horse, had fallen off, and I was back at the barn waiting for him. When he fell off, he'd cracked some ribs, and the horse came running back with an empty saddle, and I was sitting on the fence, and I just sat there and waited and waited. And he comes up over the hill like, "Jen, when you saw the horse come up without me, what'd you think?" I said, "Oh, shucks, Dad, I knew you'd be fine." Because he was always. He was invincible, and he was so tough. And so I think he really taught me that balance between strength and love, and that it's a harmony and that they exist together. And so the last thing I want to do is just read a poem, if I can. Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am the thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. And as you awake in morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the day transcending night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
May I start by saying, in the words of Kai, fuck cancer. Jorge Quixote. He'd never let us call him that, Jorge, because he felt insulted every time we butchered it. So he was known to everyone as George. I called him Georgie because I often added a Y or an IE to the names of folks I was drawn to, and boy, was I drawn to him, as was just about everyone else who met him. We were drawn to him because what we experienced was the genuine article. What we saw is what we got. There were no games with him. Georgie and I taught Our Whole Lives, which is a sex ed program that the UUs and Congregationalists teach, in that particular year to 13 and 14-year-olds. I would have parents come up to me and say, "My kids are begging me to get to church on time. I've got to be on time for Al." He set the tone right away by pointing the suggestion box and saying he'd answer any question the kids had. After a few rounds, when, after each question was read out loud, the only person in the room that wasn't squirming was George, he'd tell us the answer in a calm, clear voice. He blew the angst and fear of talking about sex right out of the room. After that, the kids took him very seriously and loved every minute they spent with him. I met George about the time he took a position at UNCW, spearheading the development of the community health program that, through his leadership, is now the only public health program in the undergraduate program in the country that doesn't have a graduate program accompanying it. Chemistry lost a lot of pre-med students to that program. Of course, public health majors got to take courses and get advised by George. That certainly had a lot to do with it. During his years at UNCW, he became one of the most beloved teachers and a highly respected colleague. He was a super Seahawk fan. He had the school logo tattooed on his arm. And as it happens, the powers that be changed the logo. Undaunted, he had the new logo tattooed on the other arm. Then he'd come to basketball games with a muscle shirt, right? Showing off the tattoos, and invariably he was on the Jumbotron, invariably. And he never missed a chance to tell the chancellor exactly what he thought he was doing wrong. As it happened, there was a lot to choose from. But it's Quixote that really captures George. He spent his whole life sending love to beings of all stripes, accepting them, encouraging them, nurturing them, and in many, but certainly not all cases, rescuing them. I'm sorry, Kai. I'm about to talk about Smokey. And it didn't matter how impossible a windmill, he'd joust it. In fact, the more impossible, the better. Among the many animals he adopted was Smokey, a Great Dane with a head the size of an anvil and a really bad attitude. When he adopted him, they told him that they were really afraid to let anyone adopt the dog because of its really bad attitude. I know he terrified Jerry and me when we'd come for one of those evenings of dinner and a movie. There we'd sit on the couch and this giant head would descend between us and nestle itself there. Neither of us dared move because we knew he could eat our face off. And would. But in George's arms and Kai's, that dog melted. He was a puppy. Sadly, he wasn't so puppy-like around other dogs, and finally, they had to put him down. Undaunted, George adopted Zora, the fox, a small pit bull mix who had been so badly abused as a puppy, he was told she'd never interact with humans again. Humans, maybe. George, no way. He gave that dog so much love, she became the most loving of dogs, a dog that will lick your face off. Take those images and expand them over a lifetime, and you have a glimpse of this powerful, loving being who uplifted all he encountered. Georgie, I miss your light. I miss your love. I miss you. You've been dying ever since I've known you, and now you've gone and done it. On May 2nd at high noon, you took your last breath. And since, as far as I know, the rules are that you can't exist on this plane without a body, we'll have to wait for a different plane when I'm certain we'll meet again. The attraction is palpable. It was a joy and privilege to have you in my life. Rest easy, my friend.
There are two reasons why I'm singing this song, The Impossible Dream. One is because, as Jimmy told you, George embodied the spirit of Don Quixote. He helped those who needed help. He loved for no reason other than to share that love. As Don Quixote said, "You say that I am mad because I seek treasure instead of trash. Perhaps too much sanity is madness, and maddest of all, to see life as it is and not as it ought to be. Because George always saw life as it ought to be and would do everything that he could do to make it that way." And there was a whimsy to Don Quixote, and certainly George could embody that. I will never forget when, undergoing treatments, I came in and sat down by him in church, and I noticed he had a redness on the side of his face. And I said, "George, what happened?" He said, "Well, sometimes when you get radiation treatments, it can burn your skin." And I said, "Oh, that's horrible." And Becky, who was sitting on the other side of him, said, "Stop that! George, tell him the truth." And George said, "I was doing a flaming shot and I missed my mouth." And my response was, "But you were a fireman. How do you do that?" George was certainly whimsical about many things, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that as we all gather back there some of those times. But the second reason I chose this song is not only because it embodies George so much, but because the last time The last time I sang it was with him, right here. I sang each verse, and he would sing it again in Spanish. And I sure wish he was here now so that he could cover for me when I inevitably break down while trying to sing this song. But I'm going to do my best to do this for George. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man scorned and covered with scars still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
Our closing words as we extinguish the chalice, these words adapted from the writing of George Eliot. May we join the choir invisible of those immortal dead who live again in minds made better by their presence. May we reach that purest heaven, be to other souls the cup of strength in some great agony, and be the sweet presence of a good diffused and in diffusion ever more intense. So shall we join the choir invisible, whose music is the gladness of the world.